Yo, can you hear me? Yo, can you hear me? Yo, can you hear me? Yo.
Okay. You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
All right. Cool.
Um.
Yeah, I was having the same exact issue. I think there's a bug with the stage channel thing. I think we were both having the same issue at the same time.
Okay.
But yeah, I closed and opened the app. So yeah, we're good to start whenever. It looks like we already got some. Oh wait. I'll do the introductory statement. Did have that cooked up.
Yeah.
I uh I have a little script for that part because All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly matchup event. As always, this is a system in which we vote in a character to learn about, and a character specialist is invited to help us do so. This week, we voted in Villager, and for our special guest, we have Trexchess.
Hello?
That being that being said, there are some things we should all know before we start. Questions will be handled at the end, so it's best to write them down and then somewhere so we can answer them all at one time. Everything will be logged in chat, so make sure your voice is very audible and easy to understand. If you need to, the Tony bot is capable of displaying hitboxes and the moves. So you just input /moves, character, probably villager, and then the move. And lastly, please be respectful of not only our special guest, but our listeners as well. That being said, take it away.
Yo, thank y'all for having me. I think I'll start just a little bit going over who I am and um, how long I've been playing Villager. Uh, I started playing Smash in general in 2018 and became a Villager main about a month and a half after the release of Ultimate. So I didn't play any of him in Smash 4. I was a Rosa main in 4, but I've really been drawn to the character in this game because I feel like he has a lot of very unique strengths, especially when it comes to conditioning and edgeguarding from uh, far away. Uh, at the top of the Villager WMU, I put in there uh, the move tier list for Villager, and that's how I'm planning to go over Villagers kind of move by move. There, but I feel that Villager has a lot of specific things that you need to know in order to both successfully play him and play against him. And if you're unaware of those things, it can really cost your ability to counterplay him effectively, which is especially important because Villager is definitely a character that can be frustrating to deal with and can put you in a lot of repetitive situations where if you're picking your options incorrectly, you can end up just kind of banging your head against a wall over and over again. So to start off with, I'm going to be going over first what I think are Villager's 4 most important moves. These are the 4 moves that every Villager player needs to be a master of, and the 4 moves that, like, if you're going to take away anything away at all from this, it should be how to understand and play against these 4 moves. So those 4 moves are Slingshot, Lloyd, Bowling Ball, and Village. Horizontal spacing tool comes out frame 10 for the forward air version and frame 13 for the back air. Back air has a slightly stronger sweet spot and will kill slightly earlier than forward air will. They also notably have a little bit of an arc to them. So as you can see, the slingshot pellet will end up a little lower than where it starts out at. This is usually fairly inconsequential, but it becomes important when you think about reflecting slingshot, because if I do like a rising forward air, back air, by the time I get to the top of my short hop or full hop, if you've reflected the slingshot, if you don't do it like at like the up close sweet spot one, I'm going to just go over the arc with the remainder of my jump. So generally, if you're trying to like reflect slingshot pellets from a distance, you're usually not going to be able to get off of that, because most of the time it will either hit the ground too early because of where it's hitting on your reflector is lower than where I started the move, so it'll just hit into the ground, or I'll just be above it by the time it arcs back to me with the rise in my jump. But you can definitely reflect like sweet spot up close slingshot, like that's going to kill me really, really early, especially if you've got a good reflector. But the general idea of slingshot is you're using this move to stuff out your opponent's approaches, to take space, as well as just to tick damage over and over and over again. It also is really good at covering distance off stage. So if somebody recovers high, you can beat them out with slingshots or go low with them. You can do slingshots coming up. You can do slingshots from ledge. That's usually a really common villager option. Also from platform, slingshots are very effective because you're just kind of getting like a free, really good height really quickly. Though most of the time, hitting villager shield with most aerials or like as well as like some moves that will bring you lower to the ground, because rising slingshot by the time it comes out is already a little up in the air. It has trouble hitting pancakes out of shield. Like if I want to hit a lower opponent, I have to like give it some more time. So unless you're like a really tall character like a Sephiroth or a heavy like DDD or Ridley, you're going to be able to not usually have to worry so much about slingshot out of shield, as long as you're using not an like incredibly unsafe move. But the main weakness of slingshot, which is going to be a theme for a lot of this presentation, is that these slingshot pellets have projectile priority. So if you have big, long-lasting hitboxes on your aerials, they will usually beat out slingshot and keep going and hit me, especially if you do them up close, which leads into like one of the fundamental red light, green light counterplay of Villager is that Villager wants to hit you preemptively before you can throw out your big aerial hitboxes. So, like if I'm going up against like an Ike, for example, a character I know wants to be swinging those big sword aerials at me, I'm going to try to get like a soft read on when I think he's going to jump and cover the area that I expect his jump arc to go through with the slingshot. Like do like a quick full hop, quick short hop, and just try to hit him before that sword aerial comes out, because by the time it's already coming out, slingshot's just going to lose. So I have to be the one to hit first most of the time in those scenarios. What you can do, usually pretty non-committally, because again, how much distance you can cover with slingshot. But you can also, knowing that, try to get like over villager slingshots and then come down from like if you're Falco and you've got your big full hops, you can come down with like a down air from above where I can hit you with slingshot, and by this time like this down air is coming out, like the dare is going to beat my slingshot if I try to do it in response. So that can be a good way to, if you're getting hit by like these hits of slingshot, like the ones that are just not even sending you into tumble, like most of the time if you get hit by one of those, you're going to want to just disengage or just reset that situation and just kind of look for what the villager does after he hits you with one of those slingshots, because depending on what that villager does, you're going to be able to get different openings. But that mostly covers the slingshot specific stuff. I'm definitely going to be coming back to this move because it synergizes really, really well with a lot of the rest of Villager's kit, but that's the important stuff to keep in mind for now. The next really important move, and the move you've definitely died to way too many times if you've ever played against Villagers, is Bowling Ball. Bowling Ball is Villager's S-Smash. It's -4 on shield, does more knockback the farther it falls, and will just kill at absurd percentages if you can manage to land it. It also, you can do it like off a platform, them trying to come in and hit you, and it has it is like the kill move in Villager's kit for stealing stocks early. Most important thing to know about Bowling Ball, in my opinion, is to have an idea of how to recover around it, because the most basic Villager edge guard is just to stand at the ledge and do bowling balls. And there are a couple different ways you can get around it fairly consistently. Probably the most basic one is just to go high over it, just to recover past it like that. You can also hug the stage. If you can get outside of this line parallel to the stage, I kind of think of that like the bowling lane, because the bowling ball can't fall and move horizontally. It only falls straight down. So if you can get in and hug the stage and then 2-frame snap, it makes it a lot harder for a Villager player to time that bowling ball to hit. Whereas bowling alley, or having to cross over it from here, that gives you a bigger window in which you can get hit and makes you a lot more likely to die in that scenario. Same thing applies to like air dodges. Jump air dodge can or jump directional air dodge can be a good tool to avoid bowling ball, but if you do like a bad directional air dodge, one that like leaves you like if you do it from above the stage, you're going to have like a more vulnerable 2-frame window there, and makes it like really easily for that bowling ball to connect. A lot of like cloud players can have that habit where they'll like directional air dodge in and just die way earlier than they should. Some characters are also privileged enough that their uppy will clank out bowling ball and let them snap afterwards. Like Shulk is the best character for this. Shulk's first hit of uppy will fully clink out bowling ball, and then you can just hit villager for free with the second one. Like disrupt villagers setting up bowling balls with stuff like projectiles, like lasers, or Wii Fit soccer ball is another really common one. But if a villager is just bowling balling at ledge, one thing you don't want to do when you have gotten to ledge is to try to double jump aerial to punish it. Because when you let go, you are immediately losing that invincibility from snapping ledge, and it's way too easy to let go and then just being hit by the still active and lingering bowling ball. Like when Cola lost to Javi on Earth, the villager player at Let's Make Move Miami this weekend, game 4, Cola died because he let go of ledge to try to start like a drop from ledge aerial, and the bowling ball was still active, and he died at like 70. Like, that's just something you got to be aware of, and you can either, if you want to do that aerial, you can, but you're going to have to delay it and like wait for the bowling ball to be that aerial from ledge. Bowling ball can also be reflected. So if you have a reflector, like some characters like Mario will like cape in this spot when they have a read on when I want to release bowling ball, like double jump up, cape, then up B, and that will knock the bowling ball back up into me. Though depending on your reflector's like velocity, sometimes you can reflect a bowling ball, especially when like villagers up on like a top platform, and I can buffer pocket in time to just be able to pick up that bowling ball. And villager with pocketed bowling ball is just going to take your stock at like 10 if he gets like the right nair setup. So that's usually something you just want to keep in mind based on, like, if you play character reflector, figuring out, okay, if I do reflect in this scenario, how fast is this going up? Is this actually going to leave me in a disadvantage? Or is this actually a good option to prevent villager from just pressing their projectiles? To use an attack that does like 10.5% or more, if you use a weak attack, it's just going to lose to bowling ball. But like most strong attacks, or like especially disjointed strong attacks, will just clink out the bowling ball, keep going, and hit villager. But if you do find yourself in a scenario where you have like clinked on the ground with bowling ball, usually you will be at a frame disadvantage there, and that's not a scenario you want to find yourself in. In this scenario, though, where you're like under a ledge and a villager is bowling balling, you can shield this, but that will put you at a frame advantage. So like bowling ball, like run off dare, is usually a pretty common option that villagers will do when they're bowling ball on ledge. Generally, if you want to contest a villager that's just kind of bowling ball and off the edge of a platform, like you want to position yourself because they have to do it off the edge. If you're not off the edge, it's going to hit onto the stage. But if you try to come up with like an aerial and you're moving into the bowling ball, I've gotten plenty of kills before because the bowling ball in the scenario just trades with an aerial that people are throwing out. And unless I'm at really high percent or you're using a really strong aerial, most of the time that's not a trade that you want to take. But that's the basics of bowling ball for the most part. The other thing to keep in mind is if you do shield a bowling ball on the ground, there are a couple different options that a villager will follow up with. Those are usually down tilt, trying to like shield poke you after you're like lost a lot of your shield from the bowling ball. It can be down smash. Down smash is a pretty fast follow-up out of this, and with how safe bowling ball is, if you release shield and try to do something like a grounded stock or just you in a really bad scenario. So generally, what I would recommend doing whenever a villager bowling balls your shield, you either want to roll away. If you've got a very fast grab, like a frame 6-7 grab, you can try to grab out of shield as well, or just jump away. Like, especially a full hop, like villager has to commit to doing a full hop themselves to like follow after you. But if they do any of the other options, which villagers like a lot more likely and common to pick, you can then just come down with an aerial and punish the villager for mashing on your shield in that regard. Then the next of the core 4 moves of Villager's kit is Villager's Nair. This move does like everything for Villager. This is a huge part of their kit. You can do 2 in a short hop. It kills .60-ish at ledge. It can get kills with Sweet Spot. Its combo breaks. It's frame 3, so it's frame 6 out of shield. It's going to hit on both sides of Villager. So if you hit Villager's shield with poor spacing, this can punish cross-ups pretty solidly. It's also, with how fast it is, it will hit pretty low. So like this can usually punish pancaking moves as well out of shield in a way that like Slingshot cannot. But the main weakness of Villager Nair is that it lacks range. So because there is that lack of range and lack of disjoint, most of the time you're going to want to respond to this move with a longer range aerial, and most aerials in the game are longer than Nair. Another thing you should not let Villager get away with is a lot of villagers will like short hop Nair on your shield, short hop Nair, and to finish that second Nair, and you've got all the time in the world to get under them and punish their landing. So that's something to keep in mind and be on the lookout, like scouting out when you're fighting a villager. Okay, what are their habits when they're nairing on my shield? Are there any moves that I can space to bait out a nair and get that way? Also be careful about like fall off nair off stage if you're recovering low. That's usually a option that synthesizes really well with bowling ball, like just to cover these diagonals with nair, or to like ledge trap with it. So like shielding and then short hop nair out of shield is a option you'll see villages throw out a lot against like neutral get up attack, and just to try to like cover this space like quickly. Lloyd Rocket, I kind of think of having like 6 different categories of use cases. You've got Lloyd Rocket, the neutral winner, where you're going to throw out a rocket, fall behind it, and use the fact that you've got this moving horizontal hitbox that the opponent has to respond to in some way to kind of initiate a rock, paper, scissors of neutral. Like the 3 main options that people have when there's a Lloyd Rocket coming at them is that they can either jump over it, they can shield it, or they can try to attack it and like attack you as well. And all 3 of those options have different strengths and weaknesses. And like the main thing a villager is looking to condition and scout out in their match is how do you respond to Lloyd, because that's going to you can do short hop Lloyd, follow up with slingshot. You can get a slingshot up after short hop Lloyd while you're falling down. You can Lloyd slingshot cover jumps and then fall out like there. Super common villager setup is the Lloyd on platform, then dash attack, and if you get hit by that dash attack, most of the time it will combo you up into the path of that Lloyd Rocket for even more damage and to put you in a really difficult place. So that's the primary idea of using it in neutral, is just like putting it out there and saying, okay, I have this extra hitbox. What are you going to do now? And that is really Villager's strongest approaching tool, is following in behind a Lloyd Rocket. The next major use case of Lloyd Rocket is that Lloyd is a really good stalling tool. So if I Lloyd in the air I lose all of my momentum. Like I immediately just stop right where I am. So you can use this property in a lot of different ways. Like one way you can use this property is if you get knocked off stage, uh, you can Lloyd towards stage, and this will let you live like 3-4% longer than just normal DI would. So as long as you have the ability to Lloyd, like you haven't Lloyded already, or like your Lloyd's already despawned, you'll be able to survive longer with that. It also can be used in juggle scenarios where if I get knocked up into the air here and I'm above where my opponent can reach, I can Lloyd to kind of react to like a double jump aerial so that I pause in place, am like too high to get hit by that double jump aerial, and then can come down afterwards after my opponent has already spent some of their resources. This is especially useful for opponents that are going to try to cover your landings and anti-air with like quick grounded tilts or dash attacks. Like there's so many times where I'm like falling in at like around this height. I throw out a Lloyd. My opponent thought I was going to land on the ground, and because they were covering that grounded landing and not me just pausing for a sec there, I'm then able to punish that dash attack with like a fallen air, a down air, or some other move. Because they like bit too early, even when I'm out of all my other resources. Like especially when I've already used my double jump or already air dodged, this can be a big way to get openings. There are a couple other ways you can use Lloyd Rocket to stall. If you spawn Lloyd Rocket directly into the blast zone, it despawns immediately, but lets you get that pause, so you can repeat that over and over again. Though, like usually that isn't tournament viable. Like you're not really ever going to see villagers going for that in tournament, but it is a potential option in like time. Load rockets into the ledge, like right away, and on stages with flat walls like Kalos, you can kind of just do that over and over, and stall out your opponent that way and try to get them impatient to come off and contest you. Another use of Lloyd besides stalling and neutraling is Lloyd as a protector. So Lloyd has is a physical treated as a physical object and not a projectile in the game, which means stuff like banana or gyro or min arm stuff that would normally go through projectiles will like stop on a Lloyd rocket, and like you can also absorb like and take hits from other projectiles with Lloyd rocket. Like one of the key things in the Wolf matchup or the Samus matchup is that you can throw out Lloyd and charge shot or laser will get hit by it, though your whole body so you can with good spacing on your projectiles shoot a projectile so it goes high enough over the Lloyd rocket but still hits the top of a villager's head. Like that's a really big thing to learn with the projectiles that you have in your kit is how do these projectiles interact with Lloyd rocket, and how can I use those interactions to gain an advantage, because villagers going to have to throw out Lloyd rocket. Like that is villager's most important neutral tool. So how you respond to it will really dictate how well you do in the matchup. But with that in mind, this kind of transitions into the next use of Lloyd Rocket, which is what I like to call like the trickster. So when Lloyd Rocket gets to the end of it, we see it has that little like poof and explosion, and that's like the big hit of Lloyd Rocket is at the very end. But you can trick Lloyd if enough damage is dealt to Lloyd that it explodes. So if you do more than 11.5% to Lloyd Rocket, it goes up a little bit with scaling. So in practice, it's like pretty much 12. If your attack does more than that amount, it's going to destroy Lloyd Rocket. And Lloyd spawns and can be destroyed starting frame 1. So this makes it so that if you throw out a big attack and a villager just Lloyd's rockets into that attack, you get hit by the big explosion, and that does more damage and knockback and can kill around like 110, even lower than that with bad DI. And so that's just a really big thing to keep in mind, is just spacing yourself in such a way that you can avoid that explosion. I'll go over how to do that in it spawns into like a wall like this. It also can get that big exploding hitbox, and that means that like oftentimes you'll see like villagers set up Lloyds with tree, and if you run into like if you're there on the tree right when the Lloyd hits, you can get hit by that big explosion. You can also spawn Lloyd into the stage from ledge like that, and that gets the big explosion. So you can just be really tricky with it. There's also a setup where if you run off stage and just buffer short hop up air, that Lloyd Rocket will stick right at the ledge of the stage and just stay there and be like an active hitbox 2 framing tool. You can also ride on top of Lloyd Rocket, and when you're riding it, you can slow it down or speed it up by pressing forwards or back. Now that we've covered all of that, though, here's how you want to go about beating Lloyd Rocket, even online. So Lloyd doesn't have, besides like you destroying it from an explosion, it doesn't have a hurt box, and still it starts moving. Like once you see that fire come out and it starts moving forward. And that's not till around frame 50, which means you've got like 50 frames after a villager is committed to a Lloyd Rocket from which you can get in and get a punish and not get hit. This makes stuff like grab, a run up grab, run up dash attacks, and running in with aerials that do less than 11.5% and kind of using the like pushback mechanic in Ultimate, where you can push somebody back as you're moving through them to get past Lloyd and then hit Villager. Villager can't do anything besides spawn frames to finish. So for like the first 37, 38 frames of the move, you can get like a true punish on Villager for throwing out Lloyd. So the name of the game then with dealing with Lloyd, especially if I'm coming back to stage and spawning a Lloyd to try to cover myself, is you want to overshoot your aerials. Like you want to try to space yourself in such a way that you're hitting through Lloyd and hitting me, or like stuff like Bowser Fair. If you undershoot it, you're just gonna die to the Lloyd explosion. But overshooting Bowser Fair and hitting with like the back half of it, that will let you kill Villager for doing those Lloyds right off stage pretty consistently. And like even really, really slow characters can punish Lloyd at like mid to short range, even online. The where it becomes throw Lloyd out, and etc. But now that we've covered all that, I'll kind of quickly go over the rest of Villager's kit. Like the next move that probably needs the most explanation is Villager's down B. So Villager's down B has 4 distinct parts and 3 distinct phases. So the first phase is when you put the sapling on the ground and plant it. This has some Z-axis shenanigans, but besides from that, there's no hitbox on this part. The sapling is going to last out on the ground for 13 seconds, during which you can't interact with it. Think of it like C4 in the same sense. Like you can't do anything to break it or to make it go away faster. It's just you can move around with the watering can in a lot of different ways. And there's like an invisible gauge within the game that it doesn't show you of how much water has been given to the sapling. And once that gauge gets filled up, the tree is going to spawn up. And because there is that invisible gauge, a very important thing to look out for, and I think that a lot of villagers will do between stocks especially, is half water a sapling, so that when they water it next time, the tree comes up faster. And this tree like erupt hitbox lasts for longer than it looks like it should. Like even when like the tree out, it's still active for a little bit. This can catch people that aren't familiar with it pretty off guard because they think, oh, the tree's out, I can now run forward and attack villager. And they can still get hit by that lingering hitbox for is that you can attack through it, you can run through it, but projectiles and stuff won't go through it. They'll just stop on the tree. The tree also has an invisible hit point gauge, so if you do enough damage to the tree, it'll go away early. And the more damage you do, the faster it goes away. So even if I do like that, it's not going to last as long as it would if I hadn't damaged it. Undamaged, a tree lasts for about 12 to 13 seconds. So because of the property where projectiles don't go through it, if I'm behind tree and I want to attack the other player, I have to commit to either going over it or to running past it and then attacking. Though this is reciprocal, like this applies to both players, but keeping that in mind can let you okay, there we go. Yeah, come out ahead in the mind games when you got a tree up. So, though in general, you kind of want to space yourself at about this range behind the tree when it's unchopped. And the reason for this is chopping tree. Like, I buffered shield after I chopped tree, and you puts you in a crazy amount of lag. So the only hitbox that's coming out when you're doing the first chop of the tree is of the axe itself. So there's a really big punish window for you to run through with a dash attack or run up grab through tree or whatever on that first chop. At my local, there's a Greninja player that literally every time I chop tree, he will, if I do it and he is anywhere close to tree, it is a run through dash attack. More difficult matchup than if you do punish that, and that's one of the critical things that separates good villager counterplay from bad villager counterplay. Other properties with tree is that when you chop the second time, that is something you want to avoid because chopped tree, especially if you can combo the act of chopping the tree, the axe will combo into the tree coming down, and that does 40% minimum. It will kill you with bad DI as early as 30-40%, and even with good DI will kill at 70-80 plus. There's also an RNG chance of a wood chip spawning out, and the act spawning out wood chip has a hitbox as well, so that's something to be aware of. But the wood chip itself is pretty mediocre as a projectile, though some will use wood chip to kind of combo that into axe, and can also be just used similar to how a peach player would use turnip or a bad link bomb, and it goes pretty far. You can chuck it up or throw it forward, and it will go a pretty far distance. But other than that, not super notable. There's a very, very small chance that tree can also spawn a fruit item that will heal you between like 5 and 8%, but that's usually pretty rare. Like even villager players, like I usually see it like at most once, twice a month, playing villager pretty regularly. There's also, if you look carefully at the tree coming up, there's a little hop when the tree is cut down and timbers over. And because of that little hop, it will catch you if you're trying to get over it with an aerial. It's going to come up a little higher than you think it will. And that can just catch people and have them die way earlier than they should just from getting clipped by the tree. Pretty reflectable though, and it's pretty like easy to see. Like I can't chop it from all the way over here, so I have to be up close to chop it, which means it's pretty obvious for the most part when it's going to be coming down. So because tree only lasts for 13 seconds, most of the time you can kind of just avoid it and not worry about it. But if you do want to contest tree again, you contest it before the first chop comes out, or you wait outside of that timber range to like see what the villager player is going to throw out. And if they do commit in front of the tree, that's when you can come in with your tilts or aerials or whatever. But that's most of the basics of tree. The axe itself, really good. Comes out frame 6, so like frame 9 out of shield. You can B-reverse it. And when a villager has axe, their kill power goes up pretty substantially because like they don't really have another move in their kit like it. But it is very unsafe. It's something like minus 30 plus. Whiffs or hits shield, but you should keep in mind that when villager does have access to axe, you want to be cognizant of movement habits they might have caught on to, especially villager players are really good at picking up on when you like to jump and what your jump habits are, just because of how much they're able to proc jumps through their neutral. So a very common thing is a villager player will get you at ledge, set up tree, and then you come off from the corner with a jump. The villager player calls out your jump with an axe, and you die at like 100, 110-ish at ledge. Next move I want to cover is Villager's Jab. First thing to know about Villager's Jab is that Jab on shield is technically untrue. And because Jab technically untrue, it doesn't follow the 10-hit auto roll rule. So if you try to roll behind Villager when they're jabbing on your shield, a lot of the times you'll just get hit by the jab. And because of that, or if you try to go for an auto parry, there's enough time where the parry comes out and then you get hit by the finisher and you didn't get time to throw out a move or whatever. So most of the time, if a villager's jabbing on your shield, you're going to want to angle your shield toward the villager and then just jump away. And that is the best way to guarantee that you'll get a punish out of the situation. Though if a villager does end their jab with the finisher early on your shield, that is very unsafe, and that's when you can get your big punishes on it. But if you try to treat it like a lot of other rapid jabs, again, because it is technically not true, like your instincts on what to do in those scenarios will usually fail you. Other than that, no, like Villager's Jab is pretty good. You can link it into a lot of hits. You can SDI out and away from it, and that's something that you should do especially at ledge, because if like villager sets up like tree on one side, ledge on the other, you can get hit by a lot of damage from the jabs. But if you SDI out, you'll be able to avoid most of that. The thing I like to do is like jab one, bowling ball, to kind of force you right down into that bowling lane, just from like not going really anywhere to the jabs. The way to get around that is just to like immediately buffer your up B like, as soon as you get out of that hit stun, and that's gonna avoid you most of the time from like getting hit by that like particular messy scenario. Though like if a villager gets a read on like your neutral get up, like a jab on that is going to be a lot of damage and put you in a pretty rough spot, especially because like the angle jab sends out at is pretty or synergizes really well with like dash attack from ledge. Like those are going to cover each other really well. Up air is one of villager's most important kill moves. It has 3 different versions: the 1 turnip, the 2 turnip, and the 3 turnip. 1 and 2 turnip have 30% chances of coming out respectively, and 3 turnip has a 40% chance. Same thing applies for down air. Down air is an option you're going to see villagers fall down with a lot in disadvantage because it's a very long-lasting move. Like villagers will also like sometimes come off the ledge, like come off the ledge like that with a turnips to cover themselves that way, but it only covers directly above and below villager. So if you can be diagonal to villager or have moves that come out diagonally, because villager's air drift isn't that great and their ground speed isn't amazing, like it's hard for villager to cover at those diagonals, and those are usually the angles you want to approach and punish villager at. Down air like will sometimes combo into up air as well at some percentages, though the villager player has to react to this because again the number of hits they get the 1 turnip will spike if you hit 1 turnip down air. That's pretty much it for up air and down air. The next really important move to villager's kit is dash attack. Dash attack is a pretty quick projectile, though it's very unsafe on shield. Though the biggest strength of the move is that you can send it off the ledges. So by doing like instant dash attacking off the ledge, you can like cover a lot of different angles, and if they get hit by that dash attack, sweet spot dash attack will combo into forward air at most kill percents, and the late hit dash attack will put you in a really rough spot off stage because it will put you right around ledge level where villager has a lot of horizontal tools to cover you or just set up for a bowling ball. you usually want to position yourself around like here-ish, so that you're not too close that you get bowling balled, and you're not so far away that you're going to get dash attack. You can also just kind of sit here, like outside of the dash attack range, and then once that dash attack comes out, then you take your stage control. Taking stage control in general is pretty important against villager, because villagers like to corner themselves with like dash back slingshots, dash back Lloyd, and once you've forced them to run off stage to dash back to, they do stuff like run off slingshots. But villager doesn't have great tools to escape the corner, so by pushing them into the corner and then punishing them, throwing them off stage, and then ledge trapping them, that's the where you're going to get your most damage against villager and where they're going to be at their weakest. Speaking of recovering, though, villager's up B is these balloons. These balloons, similar to Rob up B, have an darker the balloons are, the less fuel I have. You can also like release the balloons. That uses a lot of gas, so you almost never see villagers do that. Like other important things with the up B is these balloons have hurt boxes, which leads to it being pretty tricky to ledge guard villager by popping their balloons. Like, the easiest way to kill villager is to pop both their balloons without hitting him, but that's really hard to do in practice. Like, most of the time when people do it to me, it's on accident. Like, We Fit Up B has a really good way of accidentally only hitting the balloons, but because of that, generally most of the moves you're going to use are going to be stuff that hits through both the balloons and then hits villager, like strong spell. So like I can recover slower like that and then come in. If you only have one balloon, like let's say you hit villager and you only hit one of their balloons, that is going to make it so that the villager doesn't lose any speed for losing one of their balloons. They only lose their ability to accelerate further. So they're not going to be able to speed up any more than like the speed they're already going at. But getting a feel for villager up B is really important for if you want to go off and edge guard it. Though generally, villagers' fast tools like slingshot and nair and the ability to like recover from like literally the bottom blast zone makes it so that a lot of times if you do try to go off there and contest villager, like villagers will either one, wait, or two, throw out way more aerials than you expect people to throw out when you're edge guarding them, especially because their up B itself doesn't have a hitbox. Like it goes off to edge guard me, they get behind me, and I like slingshot them over into the blast zone. Like that's another really common thing you'll see because villager can wait so much longer than most characters can when it comes to recovery. Though villager's up B is by no means unbeatable, and if you get a good read on how the opponent likes to get to ledge, you can definitely hard punish it. Though the easiest way to deal with it is usually by long-lasting 2 frames. Like Rob down air, Ivysaur down air, Lucas down smash are all really good 2 framing tools against villager recovery. Though, depending on the matchup, you'll have either a better or worse time doing that. Though I feel like the most important way to deal with villager when villager is off stage is to ledge trap. Villagers roll. It's not very good. Like it loses. It loses invincibility. Pretty early, doesn't go that far. Get up attack is pretty short. And like jump from ledge also doesn't go particularly far. And like the only real disjoints I can go throw out from ledge are like right in front of me. So stuff like shield at the ledge or just like double jump full hops up here can be really good at keeping villager in the corner and then just like reacting and batting them away. Or you can stay at this distance, and as long as you've got a plan to like shield and then deal with like villager like rising slingshot from ledge, because that's going to be a common option at all levels of villagers that you're going to face is like rising slingshot from ledge. And so positioning yourself at ledge at either like this distance or up here or like right here are all really, really good. Other things that you might see villagers do off stage is they love to double jump back air onto stage. That's got like big coverage horizontally, and that's just something that you're gonna like have to respect. A lot of the times you'll hit them and they're like hit out there, so they'll do that far away Lloyd and then just follow the Lloyd in. That's something that villagers will like set up Lloyd and then air dodge in and follow the Lloyd into stage. And again, you can punish that by like overshooting and hitting the villager during the like 38 frame so that they're stuck in the Lloyd, and then like the 50 frame startup window. Let's see. If you do get grabbed by villager, villager's grab is slow, but it's still unreactable at like frame 17. Most of the time, you want to DI away from villager. That will allow you to limit the down throw follow-ups at lower percents to mid-high percents and not die to back throw, which is pretty quick. Villager forward throw does not kill at 999%, so you're never going to die to it. So the best thing to do around it is to, again, DI in the direction that villager is facing. There's no combos from this. It's really just like never used because like at high percents down throw will throw them up anyways and has like that little bit of a diagonal to it. That covers villager pivot grab is pretty good for as far as villager grabs go, and can be used out of dashback. But because of how slow it is, like coming in at those diagonals will usually beat it out. Let's go over Villager's other smash attacks now. Down smash hits on both sides of you and has a weaker hit if the opponent's in the air at around like 95 ish percent and above, you can get down smash, up smash, which will kill confirmed. And unless you've got like task smash, you can like that can be annoying to get out of. Though, like below these percent, if you ever get hit by the and because that will limit the punish as much as possible. At lower percents, something villagers will go for is like down smash, jab reset, or like down smash nair jab reset. So that's something to keep in mind that you may need to tech, or like you shouldn't be matching, but you should also be anticipating a need to tech at those mid percents if you do get hit by a down smash. Though speaking of teching in general with a villager, if you do get put in a tech situation, most of the time teching away is what I would recommend rather than teching in, because there are so many times you'll see a villager get somebody into a tech situation, especially online, and because bowling ball doesn't combo or doesn't connect true out of a tech scenario or like a jab lock, a lot of villagers will bowling ball to cover roll in, and this can kill you really, really early. It makes like you look like you just got your soul read. Like Cola died to it at like 70 against Javi on Earth at their match at Let's Move Miami. Villager doesn't usually have like great options to cover that. Like at most, you're going to get like dash attack, combo fall off, or something to that nature, or slingshotted. But that covers that move. At low percents, you'll see a lot of like tree growth combos into up smash, which combos into are like you can do like up smash up air. You can also do like up smash nair at low percents, and this is like the easiest way that villager builds percent at the lower percent is by connecting those hits. So especially when you see a sapling or tree up at low percents, don't just think, oh, I'm not going to die the tree at these percents, so it's more fine for me to contest it, because that's usually how villagers will get their low percent damage if they are able to get a string, because outside like down throw fair string, forward tilt and down tilt both never combo, but they're in necessary spacing tools for villager to master, because like they do something that nothing else in villager's kit does, which is like cover these spaces directly in front of them with disjoints. Up tilt has a similar purpose for above you. As you can see, like when you up tilt, your head's invincible, and they patched villager up fairly late into the game so that it's a pretty reliable kill move. Like it will kill Falco probably about 120 on platform. And it's pretty big anti-air. It also hits behind him. So like a lot of times they'll run up and you think, oh, the villager's like facing the other direction, I can give a run up punish, but like up tilt will ruin your day there. Up smash, I think you're gonna like short hop into me or short hop over me. I'll like dash attack and then up smash and cover that airspace right there. So in general, when you are trying to land on villager, because of these moves, getting behind him, as you can see, like the up smash covers in front of him but not behind him. If you can get behind the villager and land back there, that is generally where you want to land. And, which goes back to the overshoot thing that I talked about with Void Rocket at the beginning. That's another thing that only hits in front of you. So getting in at those diagonals, getting in around it, that's generally the paths you want to take to approach villager. I think that covers most of what I have for villagers' moves. I think I've also touched on most of the other like general game like phase stuff. So if anybody has any questions about any specific stuff, I'd be good to take those now.
We're going to handle those closer to the end, so you should be good.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
So, how do you not get edge guarded like with characters like Cloud or like sword characters with bad recoveries, like Cloud,
Okay.
Ike?
So Ike is different because like Ike you can like side B higher than I can like slingshot you, and then just kind of like come down with your auto cancel side B. Cloud, one of the important things again is you want to recover outside of the bowling alley. Like you want to be in here and then up beam. Like the more you can hug the wall of the stage, the better time you're going to have at recovering. If you try to come in from like out here, like with a Cloud up B, that makes it a lot more likely that you're going to hit. Though another thing that a lot of those sword characters like to do is they like to do those directional air dodges to ledge. That can be pretty effective when mixed in if you can get like the low air. Punished like in 2 frames. Another thing is like if the villagers right here like doing the bowling ball in, like you can go over them, but you want to figure out what kind of villager ledge they are, because a lot of the main differences you'll see in villager players is how they go about ledge trapping. Like some villagers love to like run off with Nair, set up slingshots. And
yeah, more specifically, how do you deal with like slingshot, Sage?
Okay, so slingshot can't hit you when you're down here, like without me going off and committing to it. But usually when I commit off, or like committing off to go do that, you should already be lower than it. So that's when you can like double jump up B with a Crom or a Cloud. But if you're like recovering high, that's when like villagers gonna want to like be slingshotting. But that's when you use the fact that villager doesn't have priority on those. The slingshot hits your sword. The sword says it doesn't care, and then it keeps going, and the sword hits me or hits my shield, but is safe enough that I can't punish it.
So like a Cloud Nair to like clank the slingshot or something.
Look, fair is usually better because it's longer lasting.
Oh, to try and hit like, oh, but you mean like if I'm trying to hit you, right? or just
doesn't
like
even
enter
really
off
have
stage?
to hit me, but like if you're recovering high from here, uh, just throwing out that fair so that like it clinks at the slingshot.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah,
But
preemptively.
preemptively, or just like if you're recovering high and you see me going up to slingshot, or you get an idea of what my timings are, you can throw in like drifting back or then like fast falling to get past it so that you can then get to ledge that way. So like if I'm covering here, you would like fast fall here and then get to ledge like that. But
Yeah, that actually helps a lot. That helps a lot.
Oh, hey Jeffro, I'm gonna send you back to the listening section. It
Yeah,
might
send
change
me
your
back.
audio out. Yeah, it might change your audio output, especially if you're on mobile when you use speakerphone. So just do be watching that. But yeah.
but
Um,
yeah,
that being said, let's try and keep questions to the very end of the lecture. Just because that keeps it formatted properly.
okay.
So yeah. So I think that we're all good.
One other thing I'll cover, kind of going off of that, is a couple different schools of villager ledge trapping, and usually that depends on like how you use tree to ledge trap. There are some people that will position tree right over ledge, uh, and one of the nice things about this setup is that if they get up attack and you drop a bowling ball, because the bowling ball hit the tree, it will last until your invincibility from your get up attack runs out. So that can be a good way to like steal or cheese stocks that way. That's one of the big ways to get around like this setup, because tree is too close to ledge to catch it when it like hops off and goes flying. Like it's all the way over here, and it's not gonna catch your ledge hang. The next school is like setting a tree around like this distance, where there's just enough space for villager to be between ledge and the tree, and the space will hit ledge and like then like fall down, and this can catch ledge get ups. This is a little bit too far though. That uh, neutral get ups aren't going to be hit right away by the tree, but generally when somebody has you at ledge in this position with like tree setup, your best option is to wait, because you can react to them chopping tree and then use like a roll or like a well-timed neutral get up to avoid the tree hitbox. The other thing that a villager is going to be looking for is if you like to jump here, once they set up this tree, they can like cover that jump in area with like an X or a slingshot, which puts you off stage again and in a pretty rough spot. There's also people that like to set up like tree at like roll distance, and like then like catch rolls with like the tree rise. Though if you get into a habit of rolling from ledge against villagers, villagers at kill percent will catch that roll with like a down smash. Because they can be positioned right here, be putting themselves to like cover with slingshot, and then you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna roll get hit by the down smash, die at like 110, and that's like a pretty common kill confirm off of villager ledge trapping. There isn't usually 100% effective solutions to any of villagers given ledge traps, but they want to go for, and having the patience and discipline to get around those can be or is like the most fundamental step to it. The like if the villagers trying too hard to set up their ledge trapping, like if they're going for the bowling balls too early, that's when you can go over it or just keep jumping and reach center stage. But doing that too often, like the good villagers will adapt to that and then start like position themselves like back here to like push you back, and that's when you can switch back to going to ledge or going to like right above ledge when you're drifting. Some other things that you'll see from time to time is like villager ledge trump axe. I personally am not very good at this, and it's not like really an option I go for, though you will see some villagers go for it. Though in general, villager doesn't really get much off their ledge trump, especially if they don't have axe, which means that you can usually be more villager because they're not going to want to trump you. Get up attack can also be pretty effective at dealing with tree at the spacing because of the invincibility. Though one thing to be careful of, or like if you bowling ball a villager, or like a villager's bowling balling but you got to ledge, a lot of villagers will retreat from this position, and usually because of how slow villager is, a lot of get up attacks can still hit him on the way back. So that can be an option to be aware of to like get out of this scenario, especially because it will beat villager keeping going for bowling balls in a way that like drop down from ledge aerial won't. The other things to keep in mind when you're at ledge versus villager is if a villager sets up Lloyd when you're at ledge, you should usually just wait for it to go past, because once it does go past, villager can't spawn another one until that one explodes. So that's when you can get an opening to like jump over it and like get back into center stage, especially because like jumping from ledge against villager in general down here mostly, though some jumps will get caught by bowling ball, and if they get a read on it with like axe, you can die really early, or like slingshot. But like up air is really villager's only tool to cover like directly above them, and it's pretty committal as far as like villager aerials go, or villager options in general. So like villager struggles most of the time if you've jumped from ledge and made it to this position with your double jump. Like villager up air usually won't like cover you, and even if it does hit you, there's always like the 1 in 3 chance that it's like a one turnip or whatever. So most of the time the risk reward is pretty skewed against villager as far as like their risk reward wall ledge trapping goes. That's pretty much the basics of villager ledge trapping. If you do, or one other thing to keep in mind ledge trapping villager is those balloons right there going off have hurt boxes attached to them. So if you ledge trap with projectile, so that some options that you throw out at ledge to like 2 frame slash left trap. Like let's say you're like a wolf main and you're like throwing out wolf nair at these spacings to try to just cover stuff because you ate the extra hit lag from hitting the balloons. That can make that a less effective ledge trap than it would normally be against most characters because you're stuck in the extra hit lag from the balloons, and now Villager has an opportunity to get back to safety. Let's see. So I've covered ledge trapping, edge guarding, neutral. Pocket. Pocket is another iconic move to the Animal Crossing kit, and is probably the most matchup dependent move in his kit. Universally, Pocket can be used as almost like a second air dodge, which is pretty valuable. Wave bounce Pocket in the air without burning an air dodge. It doesn't quite have the frame data of an air dodge or like a directional air dodge, though it does last a little bit shorter. But Pocket invincibility can be an extra mix-up that Villager has that you have to be aware of. Pocket itself has an absurdly big range in front of Villager, though not as much behind him. So if you're playing as Villager, you want to make sure that you B-reverse all your pockets if you're trying to get something that's coming out from behind you. Depending on what projectile you pocket, it can either be really good or really bad. There are certain projectiles that when you pocket them, the opponent doesn't get another one of them, and that can be pretty matchup defining. And that would be the Belmont Holy Water, Refit Medicine Ball, the Bowser Jr. Mecha Koopa, Diddy Banana, and Rob Gyro, as well as Big Link's Bomb. All an item pocketed. They can't pocket anything else, and they lose that like option of like immediate invulnerability. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Is like in some matchups you can feed Villager like a bad item to pocket, and as they're holding on to that, you can then hit them with like your better projectiles. Like, so that's something that like Robs really need to be aware of, is like Rob Laser goes through tree, goes through Lloyd. So if you've got your gyro pocketed, you can still hit them with laser, and they can't then both have your laser pocketed and have the gyro pocketed. They have to pick one. Or like Belmonts are able to do pretty similar things. And if you have both a projectile and a reflector, that also leads to additional levels of mind games with that. Unlike Isabelle, for the most part, Villager doesn't have a ton of true some worse, depending on the context in which you're using them. Like Duck Hunt Can is really bad as a pocketed item because it can explode you, you can't control its path, and it's way slower than it would come out normally. or like Snake Grenade. Pocket in it doesn't reduce the timer, so that's another projectile that Pocket in it just isn't really that good. But if you have projectiles, you definitely want to be aware of the setups that Villager would have into the Pocket versions of them, as well as just like baiting out Pocket as an option, because if you can bait out a Pocket, like there's a pretty big window afterwards to punish it, and that can be pretty useful. Let's see. For what I think, yeah, that's it for what I have to cover. So if we have any questions to wrap this up with.
You guys can request to speak, and I'll be noting that. And now does notify me, so you don't have to ask me in chat. Speaking of, Orf, our Rob main, has notified to speak. So I'm going to invite them into the stage channel right now, and they will ask the question.
Hello.
What's up, Orf?
I actually don't have any questions right now. I just wanted to
Okay.
say thank you so much. I really learned a lot about villager. I have some pretty good villagers in my region, so it was good.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, what region are you in?
MDVA. We have Fast Cree, Ember.
Yeah,
Germ.
Fast Breeze there. Ember is pretty good too.
Yeah, and we have Germ if you wanna.
Oh yeah,
I
know Germ too.
Yeah. It was really cool. My main local, actually I pretty much fight Ember a lot. So I've learned a lot naturally that way. And I learned so much that I just didn't know about Villager in the past. And thank you. You're really, really knowledgeable about your character, and it's really cool to see. Okay. That's all I had to say.
Goat. I love to see the positivity from the community. See, personally, I hate everyone, so I'm not gonna. No, I'm playing.
Are you, Sedex? You're a Wii Fit player, right?
Yeah, I will say, you may disagree just because it's easy. It's easier for opposite sides of the spectrum to have different opinions. Some may be more optimistic, some may be more pessimistic. But I've always said online this matchup is unwinnable. Maybe it's because of my over reliance on header as a player, but lately I've been getting really good at just playing offensively, and it still doesn't really work out as it feels like it should.
For the Wii Fit matchup, that's probably the one matchup in the game I have grinded the most with a variety of good players. I used to play a lot with Chunky on Wi-Fi when I was in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I've also played a lot with Honda online recently, as well as I played Super Colonel in a money match yesterday. And I definitely think the matchup's pretty bad for Wii Fit, but you do have tools to deal with some of Villager's different stuff, like down air off stage, and knowing how to use that can beat most lower to mid-level Villagers on its own for the most part in that matchup. But the other big thing for Wii Fit is it's definitely harder online, because online you can't reaction ledge trap with forward air or with forward tilt, and that's a big thing in the offline matchup. But you can still online do reaction dash attacks to Lloyds and go through those with that. Back air out of shield is pretty big at punishing slingshot for the most part.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think it's a matchup that if the villager knows the matchup, like it's hard for Wii Fit.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some people like abuse Wii Fit back air to get through, but that's just like really difficult for me, which is crazy. I usually don't complain about Wi-Fi because it's the only thing I've ever really known, and I will admittedly say I am pretty carried by it. I won't lie, but there's just one thing I can never do because even it has its own drawbacks, and I can never like time a back air to get through slingshots and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I guess it's just like a personal thing.
Or like generally, if you're having trouble getting through slingshot specifically, I think like especially online, like coming down with like a double jump can be really valuable because if I Lloyd in the time while you're up there with a double jump, you can usually come down with an aerial during that time. And if I don't Lloyd, like, don't really have a ton of options to hit you when you're way up in the air. Like, if I go for an up air and miss, I'm usually in a lot of lag, and I don't have like a huge horizontal way to cover space that way. If I go for a slingshot and you're like still above me, you can land with like aerials that way, especially like down air for like Wii Fit specifically.
Yeah.
And you can always also just mix like backing off after you've like double jumped, like especially to platform, because most of the time platforms are so strong for village. I usually ban FD as a villager player, like in most matchups, just because I like being able to do stuff like dash attack on platform or fall through platform with slingshot or do a Lloyd rocket on platform or bowling ball on platform. You just get so much off of them as like a villager player, but it does give you just a place to retreat to after you've like committed to a double jump if you're the other player is like either fall through platform or onto the platforms themselves.
All right. That also reminds me. Usually, what a lot of people cover is they cover their characters' good and bad stages, and maybe I'm just dumb and forgot or something, but I don't think you quite mentioned that. So, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah, that
the
wasn't something I mentioned.
yeah, we all play under the same stage list, so that'll be in the Villager WMU, and you can cover the your opinion on them.
That's just the SES stage list. So I really like as villager. Uh, like personally, I'm a big fan of like Kalos, Yoshi's Battlefield, and Small Battlefield. Yoshi's is really good for villager because walls are just the perfect things to run bowling balls down because you is also positioned perfectly enough so that like you can drop a bowling ball off the edge of the platform. It falls like straight down parallel with ledge. So that makes it like a pretty good villager stage. Triplets in general, I think, can be good for villager just because you get like the third platform to retreat to and just running between platforms and throwing out slingshots, throwing down bowling balls, and uh, just generally being a nuisance up there can be really strong. Uh, Small Battlefield does a lot of those things as well, though. In general, I would say Villager like doesn't really have bad stages for the most part. Like it usually depends on matchup or what are the other characters' good stages. So most of the time when I do like bans or stage picks, I'm mostly picking for what I think are the other characters' strengths or weaknesses more so than like what villagers' strengths or weaknesses are because like generally the villager game plan can be pretty flexible. distance to just cover large parts of the stage with your projectiles, where on like bigger stages like PS2 or Town or Kalos, you can just use that distance to really space people out and just like have your camping game plan work better. Though, if you ever do get a lead against Villager, camping is a really effective strategy for the most part because Villager doesn't have great approaching tools outside of Void Rocket. And, like, if you play around Lloyd Rocket correctly, especially with stuff like good aerial drift or like high jumps that can make it really hard for Villager to get in. Like, uh, I've had a match before where like a Yoshi player or a Rob player would just like go up into as high up on the stage as they could, and they just kind of drift around, wait up there, then come down with like a nair or like a strong long lasting hitbox that'll beat out. But like generally, I think picking the stages that you are the most comfortable on is the best plan of action against Villager. That covers most of what I have to say in regards to stages. Oh, something to be keep in mind of in a difference between small battlefield and battlefield is that Villager Bowling Ball can hit neutral get-ups a lot more effectively on the edge of stage on like small battlefield than it can any other stage. Though depending on your character's role on PS2, if I'm standing on the edge of the PS2 platform, I can hit people's rolls with bowling ball. But that also depends on the length of their roll. But that's usually not as much of a thing on like the other platform stages. Now, Kalos, a thing I like to do on Kalos a lot is stand on like the in because they want to go in towards stage and they just get clipped by the bowling ball and like die at like 90. So those are just some of the things to like keep in mind when you're game planning about like what stages to take Villager. Do we have any other questions or stuff that it would be good for me to cover?
Yeah, what's up? Sorry for muting. I'm in a crowded place, so I am listening. Um, I pretty much took every measure necessary to see if anybody has any questions. It doesn't appear so. So now we're gonna skip on to the resources section. I do just default to putting their character's Discord as well as since you're doing a live video of this, I'm also gonna put the VOD link to it. Especially since I'm not the best at logging everything. I'm very bad at like focusing, and I'm on mobile, so typing is really hard.
Yeah. But yeah,
So it's definitely best to have that anyway. That being said, if you have any other links or videos you'd like to send, even things detailing how to play Villager might also be useful just to have around because I know, we have some players who definitely want to consider secondaries, and Villager's very good secondary because he is very he has some very oppressive matchups. So
yeah, I can definitely also drop like my villager matchup chart as well as a couple other of the good villagers, uh, as well as there isn't really like an existing how to play villager guide because like none of the top villager players are content creators, and there's
yeah,
also not many like really good villagers, and it's not popular enough of a character to like get like an Iza Arda video or whatever. But I
fair.
will drop some links to some like specific things for the character.
All right. Now I do have a question that's it's a little off topic, but I do not pay any attention to like competitive Smash. Like, I pretty much just pay attention to what I personally am doing, and even then, I've gathered a lot of knowledge because I'm like the head coach for any like crew I'm a part of, and I try and take this as seriously as possible, which is why I go out of my way to do things like these where I invite in really good players. That also brings in the question that I kind of had that was like I don't know any villager mains. I'm gonna preface like this next sentence by saying this so it doesn't sound like I'm just immediately going into the but I was just wondering like if you like had any notable wins or anything like that because I know I did look at your like history and that's why I reached out to you because I know you're part of Down B Queens and you've also fought some really good players and beat them. But I was just wondering like what do you think your best wins are like as a player?
Um, I remember the online one. I like best couple online wins are probably like Yanni, Endrick the Falcon main, as well as some like a couple other like NCSE uh, PR players on Wi-Fi. My best offline wins is probably like uh, a lot of people in like the South Carolina Smash scene, which is where I was like most active. Like uh, Turtle Chris, who's number 10 in South Carolina last season. Winty Guitar, young player, number 15 in South Carolina on the season before that. Uh, Also players like CJ Frozen, Snake Man, number 5 in SC. Uh, though I haven't really gotten a like ton of opportunities to try majors yet. Like my like majors I've been to so far, or like big regionals, is like I've gone to like two just roll with it, MomoCon, and Don't Park on the Grass all the way back, like the first week back then. So that
All
was
right.
before I played Villager. That was a crazy tournament because like a Ganon player made top 8, and like top 2 was like ECM MVD.
All right.
But
No, I
uh,
do have another question, because I'm trying to start up something new, and
mhm.
I'm trying to start a like news channel for the crew, not like a channel or something, but I'm trying to like recap what goes on because uh, with like stuff going on in the crew, I always get a lot of questions, what goes on, like what events are when, and so I kind of want to make like a formal recap of the week. That being said, I was also going to ask if you have a VOD of your match with Yanni or any match with any good player, but I think Yanni would really help introduce like who you are.
uh,
Uh,
I don't think the Yanni VOD exists anymore. Probably that was like back in 2020,
All right.
but I can drop a couple of odds of like my villager gameplay as well as like some other good villager VODs. Like villager probably got probably their best win ever. On Earth beating Cola at Let's Make Moves Miami, and
Yeah.
there is a VOD of that.
Yeah, that's probably not an easy matchup either.
Or that matchup even. Roy
Oh,
Villager is better for Villager than you would think it would be, because most of the time, like characters are going to beat Villager with their disjoints. But Roy's like to most utilize his disjoints. Like he's only going to be hitting sour spots, and those sweet spots don't really play well with Lloyd. And also, bowling ball and all of Villager's like edge guarding tools make it really rough for Villager or for Roy to recover. Slingshot also does pretty well in that matchup.
Alright.
So
yeah,
it's one of Roy's like worst low tier matchups.
all right. Because what I was expecting is kind of just like Roy being short enough to go under short hop slingshot, and that being really hard for the villager to deal with, especially since Roy can just like back air through a slingshot or contest different things like that.
But like, it's definitely a very dynamic matchup. But I think Villager can hold their own in it pretty well.
All right. So that all being said, definitely like this chat's gonna be free to use whenever, and also you still have access to using it, so you can post any link, anything that you may have forgot, or anything that I may have forgot, because like those are all equal situations. But that being said, I'm like really busy. I thank you so much for coming out. This thing's like not easy to run, and having someone as informed, as like helpful as you was really good for us. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was great. That being said, I'm going to head out, though. Thank you for coming out. It was a wonderful experience meeting you. If you ever want the special guest role so you can talk to the crew members in the crew chat and stuff like that,